last episode of Rift News, you might have noticed that we didn't talk about the lore book as much as you thought we would. And that's because I wanted to make a separate video about it. After all, this is what I've been waiting for about 6 years now. And finally, here it is. An official physical book that contains all the canon information about the world of League of Legends. Up until now, if you wanted to learn about League's lore, you had to go to Universe, which is Riot's website that is dedicated to the story of Runeterra. There was always this unwritten rule, where if something wasn't on Universe, it wasn't considered canon information. In fact, ever since Riot launched Universe for the first time, they tried to make sure that everything that would be released here would not be taken down. Of course, there were a couple of exceptions. Some of these super old champions had to get their stories rewritten eventually, but at the same time, Riot didn't want to launch Universe and have some of the champions have no lore there. So they were kinda forced into releasing some of the older stories on Universe too. And don't forget the Darkin incident. Quite some time ago, when Riot released Varus' update, together with his cinematic, they released more information about the Darkin on Universe. There they mentioned that the Darkin were an alien race from another world. But of course, now we know that's not the case, because Riot seemingly admitted that alien races wouldn't really help Runeterra's story, so they scrapped the idea. And instead, they turned the Darkin into the corrupted Ascended we know now. Anyway, in time, all of these imperfect stories got updated, and right now, Riot is sitting on a pretty fleshed out universe. And I wonder if this new book will be a whole new source of lore, or if most of it will be released on Universe too. Since, let's be honest, it would make sense to do that, because if Riot doesn't do that, people might end up constantly cross-referencing what's written in the book and what you can find on Universe. And what's worse, if someone doesn't buy the book at all, they would be locked out of some of the important information. But again, there will also be those who will do none of it, and who will end up sitting here, watching me doing all the work for you. So, I'm not complaining that much. Anyway, with this long introduction out of the way, let's have a look at all the information we have about this new book. The title of the book is Realms of Runeterra, but I can imagine people shortening it to Realms. As in, from now on, everything you can find on Universe or in Realms will be canon information. The official Riot's description says: discover the lore of Runeterra in Riot Games' first ever collectible narrative companion book. This tome will take you on a journey through 11 of Runeterra's regions, chronicling conflicts, entrenched rivalries, and covered alliances while giving new insights into the heroes, flora, fauna, architecture, politics, and technologies from all corners of the world. Realms of Runeterra contains hundreds of illustrations, including new, never-seen-before maps and artwork, as well as original narratives that will bring the cultures of Runeterra to life. Now, first thing to note here is that the book is not focused on champions. We got this confirmed by a couple of writers already. It is purely focused on the world, the regions, and the cultures. Yes, the description mentioned heroes, but in this case they mean important characters such as Jarvan III, Borem Darkwill, or Master Tyrus. Now, because Realms of Runeterra will be a physical book, all the stores, including Amazon, got sample pages to show people. And these sample pages gave us a good idea of what to expect here. So, let's have a look at them. The first preview is the table of contents, or rather the map of contents. I know that some people prefer an actual table, where you can easily see what topic is at what page, but I think using a map instead fits into the idea of exploring a world. I believe the reason why Riot did this is because new readers will likely be interested in specific regions. After all, most players have a favorite champion or two, and it would be easier to find them by looking at a map, as long as they know where the champions are from. Anyway, as I was looking at this preview page, I noticed one interesting fact, and one super important fact that won't allow me to sleep. The interesting fact is that it seems like Riot structured the book so that the regions that are connected follow one another. I'm not sure if that was the right term to use, but what I mean by this is that if you look at the numbers, you can see that the book starts with Targon. That's probably because Targon is pretty much the source of all the major storytelling. But after Targon we got Ionia, because Ionia explains a lot of the basics on Runeterra, with their evolution trees and such. Then, following Ionia, we have Noxus. You know, the region that invaded Ionia. Next we have Demacia, their main rival. Then there is Freljord that sometimes invades Demacia too. Next is Piltover and Zone, probably for no reason, because there aren't any connections anyway. But since Piltover is gathering resources from the jungles, Ishtal is next. And because the people of Ishtal spread to the Eastern Isles, next is Bilgewater and the Shadow Isles. And the last of the regions is Shurima, probably because it makes a full circle with its connections to Targon. In short, it is probably just a minor thing, but I like how the book seems to be structured so that you always carry something from one region into the next. Now, the super important thing is hidden on the right side. There you can see that the last two chapters are The Void and Bandle City, both of which can't be physically placed on the map. That's why they are on the side. But above them, we have the timeline of Runeterra. And this is what we always wanted and needed. And you bet your grandma's savings that the moment I get this book, this is the first thing I'm covering. What is strange, however, is that for no reason at all, the timeline is placed after Targon, Ionia and Noxus, but before Demacia and the rest. The only logical reason I could come up with is that they place the timeline into the book before they start explaining the Rune Wars, since the Rune Wars kickstarted Demacia and they played a big role in the other regions, while the stories of Targon, Ionia and Noxus, because remember Mordekaiser was an ancient warlord, happen before the Rune Wars. So probably for the sake of not overloading the reader with information, they decided to spread it throughout the book. The last thing we could mention on this preview page is the description of Runeterra, which reads, composed of both material and spirit realms. Runeterra is all that separates the celestial powers of creation from the abyssal threat of all undoing. This is a magical world unlike any other, inhabited by people both fierce and wondrous. Consider this volume an invitation to explore its furthest reaches, through accounts of each region, as well as tales that bring to life the adventure and mystery that exist across the realms. Notice how it mentioned that Runeterra is all that separates the celestial powers of creation from the abyssal threat. I'm not really sure what they mean by this, so we are probably getting more info on what is happening between the Celestials and the Void. But now, let's dive into the other preview pages that go into specific regions, starting with Demacia. The first thing you may notice here is the giant map, which is actually the layout of the great city of Demacia. Now, we already know about some of these places mentioned here, because they were shown in the Lux comic. For example, the Mageseeker's compound, or King's Rock. But knowing the full layout of the map allows us to dig for Easter eggs. For example, we know that Galio is located very close to the city, so now we can speculate where exactly he could be. Also, notice how the noble family residences are right next to the military district, which is convenient for someone like Fiora. I believe we will have a lot of fun looking into these tiny references. The rest of the page shows us 3 images with descriptions we can find on Universe 2. These are the Great Plaza, the Temple of the Lightbringers, and the Citadel of Dawn. The descriptions of these images match the descriptions on Universe, so nothing new here. But the image we have not seen before is the Palace Gardens. This one is new to us. The description reads, the favorite of the late Queen Lady Catherine. These well-maintained and orderly gardens allow for moments of quiet reflection. Of course, this is where Xin Zhao meditated after the death of Jarvan III. So it's cool to see how the description references that as well. Also, Lady Catherine was Prince Jarvan's mother, who died when Jarvan IV was born. The last thing we can mention on this page is the little note saying, our people report good progress being made in Olderburg. I don't think we have heard of Olderburg before, so maybe this is a hint that Demacia is expanding its territory. Anyway, on to the next page. Here the book goes deeper into the Ionian architecture. Again, we have already seen 3 of these images. These are the Mountain Temple, the Ionian interior, and the house concept. But the other 2 images are new to us. The text goes deeper into Ionian culture. It explains how Ionians hold onto traditions, and how these traditions affect the appearance of the architecture. The main theme of these curvy buildings is the natural flow and the beauty of the land. Then the text continues talking about something we have already talked about. How Ionians avoid cutting down trees, because they greatly respect nature, and they don't want to offend or harm the tree's spirits. So instead, the woodweavers use magic to let the trees grow into the shapes of houses. However, that means that the houses are alive, and over time, as the trees grow further, the houses may change. We can see this on the right side, where the pictures show us the outside of the houses where the trees make the rooftops. And there is also a picture of the inside of such a house. As a bonus, the picture at the bottom shows us that by allowing nature to craft them homes, the village's appearance usually copies the environment around. That's why the buildings are waving. They copy the curves of the ground. The next page here is from Freljord. Unfortunately, we don't have any new images here. We only got the base description. The text here is the extended version of the description you can find on Universe. But instead of just mentioning the tribes, the book summarizes the story of the three sisters, and it sets up Freljord's relations with both Noxus and Demacia, which are Freljord's neighbors. But other than that, nothing new here. Next, we got some base info on the deepest places of Zone, called the Sump. Now, seeing how these pages are focused on the Sump alone, while pointing at the bottom of the tower, I believe that the book will use this picture to explain the other levels of Zone 2, just like it is on the map of Runeterra. Here they use a different picture, but you can see that they show us the Promenade level, the Entersol level, and the Sump level. I think the book will do the same thing, but with different graphics. Other than that, we can find all of these images with matching descriptions on Universe 2. But one thing I really hope the book does, is that it shows us all the Barons of Zone. Because the Zoneite Barons are these incredibly powerful and influential people that keep Zone in chaotic order. Universe already shows us a couple of them, but I hope we get more. Then we have the Blessed Isles. And this is where the book will probably go wild, because right now we don't know a lot about this place. And the book has whopping 34 pages reserved for it. Granted, some of them will be about the Ruined King and the Shadow Isles, but still, we will probably learn a lot more about the Blessed Isles. We have already seen all the pictures here, except that the picture at the bottom is enhanced. The version we got doesn't have the blue magic beams. The descriptions here are entirely new. The two on the left talk about how the Blessed Isles were hidden from outsiders for centuries, how the capital city called Helya was filled with renowned arcanologists, astronomers, and other scholars, and how the city was great at reading different phases of the moon, the angles of the sun, or the alignments of the stars. The text on the right talks about the White Mist, which we recently mentioned in one of our videos. It was basically the only defense the Blessed Isles needed. But besides that, there is nothing new about the Blessed Isles on these preview pages. And the last preview we got is from Shurima. Now, I don't want to cover what's written here, because this is a part of a short story. In the official description of the book, Wright mentioned that the book will also include original narratives. And this is what they meant by it. There will be new original short stories that will explain the culture of the regions. Again, I wouldn't expect champions being major characters in these stories, because that's not what the book is about. It's not supposed to set up the champions, it's all about the regions. So what I think will happen with each region in this book is that each one of them will contain the history of that region, the culture and its people, the architecture, and then I think that every region will have one short story to go with it. That would explain why all the regions have roughly 20 pages each, except for Bandle City and the Void, which are only half regions really. But that is all we can probably expect from this book. As I said, this will be a big thing for me, because it is as if Wright dumped a massive lore update that I had to convert into video form. I'm not complaining, because at least I will have content ready for the next year. But oh boy, will that be a lot of information to go through. To close this video, let me say how happy I am that Wright is releasing the complete timeline of Runeterra. Finally, I'll be able to make a new video, and people will stop messaging me about the old one being completely wrong. Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have neat mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.